I believe that conversation is an art form. I got friends who are in very different places in their life. The first person up is my friend Nick. He's still kind of living a wild life. I mean, he's 34, unmarried, no kids. We have a type of conversation. And then my friend Angelo Gingerelli, who will be second in the bulk of this podcast, he's got a wife, a kid, a career, a house. He's got responsibilities. Both of these conversations are beautiful in their own way. Okay, so I told you I'm going to be recording with my buddy Angelo about Mr.
Mike Jones.
And, exactly. There's something...
Don't act like you don't know the name.
Dude, I know the name, I know the number, you know?
He has it back. Again. That's so awesome.
What is it about this album, what is it about Mike Jones that is so memorable? Is it just the repetition? But it's a style, it's an aesthetic too, right?
He's the first Houston rapper that I think I ever heard.
Okay.
And it's the first rapper hip hop of that era that I actually enjoyed.
And I guess
and he sampled himself, which I thought was hilarious at the time. Now I think it's genius. Saves money. You're going to pay for a feature or sample somebody? Oh, no, I'll just sample myself for free. Thanks.
Who is Mike Jones's 2 syllables? If you put your name out...
Angelo Gingerelli.
We're into 7 or 8. You know what I mean?
If I made an album like this and said my name that many times, it'd be 3 hours long.
Yeah.
It'd be the godfather of rap albums.
So, yeah, we always have really good commute conversations, and for a long time we've been talking about trying to do any project, and now we're here.
Here, man.
Where'd you start with hip-hop? What was your thing, man?
I got into it super young, in the mid-'80s. I was a little kid. I was in kindergarten, and my family had Thanksgiving, and my older cousin lived up in North Jersey, and he left a cassette tape at my house by mistake, and it was Run DMC's second album.
Okay.
So I didn't see him again until Christmas, so the tape was at my house that whole month. And I just kept playing at my Fisher-Price tape recorder, and then by the time I saw him again at Christmas, I knew Rockbox, the song by heart, and I've been in hip-hop ever since then. It was just a complete... I probably would have found it some other way, but it was just a complete... He made a mistake, left the tape in my house, and I had a Fisher-Price tape player and played it to death that one Christmas season.
I have a very similar story, which was my grandfather was a hoarder. And my great-grandfather, rather, was a hoarder. So he had, and it all made sense for a while. He collected anything that had to do with audio. So he had, 5,000-6,000 records. That tube radio right there, right? He had 300-400 of them. And he had a back room where he kept the garbage. And one day I went in there, and there was 2 cassettes. Beastie Boys' License to Ill, and... the Digital Underground, I think it was the Humpty Dance single, and on the backside was Play What You Like. Right. And again, everything got logged in from those 2 albums, everything.
Yeah, and those are, I think we started in a good place, right? If I start with Run DMC and you start with Digital Underground and the Beastie Boys, that's a good place to come into hip-hop, I think, right?
Did it surprise you... over the first couple times that we met, because I don't look like a hip-hop guy, right? I usually have boots on, maybe some ripped jeans. I don't think I maybe have 1 or 2 hip-hop tattoos, but that's about it.
Right. Well, the very first time we ever met, you had a Riff Raff T-shirt on.
Okay.
Right? So it wasn't, and then I think if you grew up where we are at the Jersey Shore, and you're a skater, all the skate kids were into hip-hop, or at least listened to hip-hop when I was in high school, right?
Yeah.
So I think there was an era where I went to high school in the 90s, I'm a little older than you, but the skater kids might like all punk bands and Wu-Tang. You know what I mean? Or all hardcore and Public Enemy. So there's always some kind of crossover there. So it wasn't shocking. It was, a little surprising because you don't really look the part, but I wasn't super shocked by it because growing up, I knew a lot of people like you.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. I also think one time I was wearing a World Star hip-hop shirt, and I think you asked me if I worked for them, and I was like, no, I bought this on Etsy, dog. Right.
Yeah. I think if I remember, it was also right before World Star hip-hop became what it became. Like it wasn't.
Dude, they did not have their own merch at that time.
Yeah, that's why it was weird to me. I think that's why it hit me as being strange.
So, after doing comedy for a while, talking about hip hop, we found some fairly unique crossover, and what would probably be like our top tens. Mine's, just a few would be Beastie Boys' License to Ill. Bone Thugs' Resurrection was an amazing album. When Disaster Strikes by Busta Rhymes. Obviously the Fugees, stuff like that. And I don't know what your top 10 would look like, a sampling of it.
I would put The Blueprint by Jay-Z is in there for me, which is, I think, like, even if you like what we call artistic hip-hop, he's so good at what he does, I don't think you discount it. Nas' Illmatic is in everybody's top 10, including mine. Probably the first 3 Outkast albums, and at least 1 or 2 of them.
How do you say the first one?
Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music.
Damn, okay.
Why? Do people mispronounce that sometimes?
My buddy was just here. He was going to be somewhere looped into this podcast with a few quotes about what we're going to talk about, and he referenced that same album, and he was like, I don't even know how to say the title.
Yeah, but that hit me pretty hard. The first 2 Biggie albums, being The Age I Was when they came out, which was like a late teenager, hit me like a punch in the chest. And then like later on, I would put I guess of now, like I like Kendrick, I like Run the Jewels, I like some of the Drake songs, not his album, but his videos are all, not his videos, singles are all pretty good. But yeah, those are probably my top. I like a lot of weird underground stuff now, and the local New Jersey scene is my thing. But my top 10 ever are probably similar to everybody else's.
Yeah, I would also have to talk about, which I forgot, Sage Francis and Immortal Technique. Immortal Technique hit me like better than, like, because it was Rage Against the Machine, but it was better and it was angrier, Yeah,
and I don't know if this is the right word, but it's also like, I think just the structure of rap music lends itself to that kind of political message more than maybe any other genre, because you can say so much in a verse and in a song that's much harder to sing. Or I feel like spoken word and hip hop lyrics, just the structure of the songs allow you to say, like, for example, Rage Against the Machine might give you 4 or 5 cool lines about a big idea of a revolution, but Immortal Technique can give you like 50 straight bars of like a plan for the revolution. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That might be why he never got popular, because people knew if he got too much power, things were going to happen. He could get himself Bob Marley real quick,
Yeah. It's an interesting idea that...
And by that, I mean assassinated by the government.
I know where you're going with that. And we're going to talk about an album today. It's a lot of fun. It's a great album. If you're driving with the windows open in the summer, it's banger after banger, right?
What album is this?
Who is Mike Jones?
Oh, yeah. Well, we didn't introduce...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. So one day we hit a point of crossover, though, which we were both very excited about, which was Who is Mike Jones? Like a album full of anthems.
Yeah, it came out in 2005. I've listened to it at least a couple times a year, front to back, for the last 15 years. And it's just so good. There's just so many good songs on. Even the quote-unquote bad songs are pretty good.
Well, I think the measure of a good album is how it ages with you. Because some of the stuff 5 years from now, which we'll get to, and you're like, those are the exact things I'm worried about. But at the time, I was like, just worried about tipping.
Right. Yeah. I think, too, I think this goes to any kind of music. When you buy, like, let's say, a Drake album now, there's clearly 2 or 3 big singles, and the rest of it's filler. And at no point those 2 or 3 singles become not your favorite song anymore, right?
Right.
Like this Mike Jones album, you might have bought it for Still Tipping, you might have bought it for back then, but now you probably pick some other favorites.
So the intro is just pure promotion, right? The intro is just him talking about the album, what it's going to be, and then he introduced a concept of yelling his own name and his phone number. And that phone number, I believe, in white people's mind, has replaced 8675309. And we all know that phone number. The new one, which is
281-330-8004. 330-8074.
281-330-8004.
This is going to be a weird question. Did you ever call that back in the day?
Okay, I got some information about this the other day. He He had that number. He used to get 1,000+ calls a day. He lost the number in a downturn because Mike Jones has come in and out of popularity, and he now has the number back.
Okay.
And I don't know
That
whether it's
seems about right.
exclusively a fan line. I doubt he's walking around with it.
Right.
But I would assume even this day, 2-3 calls a day probably.
You got to think somewhere right now in November of 2020, there's a couple late 20s white kids that grew up with this song in their mental capacity, and they're having a couple cocktails. They go, let's call Mike Jones.
Let's
see
call
what
Mike
happens.
Jones, see what happens.
Do you think, too, like we're going to talk about the promotion side of this a lot, but I think he was so far ahead of his time with the idea of reach out to me. The way we follow me, he was telling people to follow on Instagram before there was Instagram. So in 2005, we're 1 year into Facebook. MySpace is just starting. Black Planet is a thing, but it didn't expand outside that community really. So he was kind of like the first artist to be like, communicate with me, give me a call.
I
don't remember anybody else really being like that before.
Not in hip hop. The only comparable thing would be Dane Cook. The way Dane Cook grew a fan base,
right?
Like with that MySpace friends list and all that. You know what I mean? And so yeah, and I remember back then. I remember when that video hit, and I remember being like, I don't love this, but there's something about it that makes me want to listen to this again.
Yeah. Like, he seems like a nice guy, right? And he seems like he's almost happy to be there doing the records. And the beat, we'll get into the beats, I guess, later, but I can't imagine you listen to these beats and his, like, just kind of, like, happy flow on them and be like, no, I don't like that. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't.
No,
like
you got hated on.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about a specific kind of hate he got a little later on.
Okay.
It was weird to me because even like in 2005, where I am in kind of life at this point, I've been listening to hip hop obsessively for about 15 years. And I was super into like Def Jux, Raucous, Eminem mixtapes, like that era of like super lyrical, Immortal Technique.
Yeah.
I got to say something when I'm on the mic type hip hop, right?
Right.
And I was living in the South. I was living between North Carolina and Virginia when this came out. So
is that the regular South or the dirty South? Where's the Mason-Dixon line for that?
Oddly enough, I can't answer that. Okay. I'm saying Atlanta is definitely the dirty South.
Okay.
Raleigh, Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm not sure where that is. It's in the gray area. But like Crunk had just kind of happened. It was kind of over Little John, the East Side Boys, Yin Yang Twins, that kind of like crazy party music. And like it was in my DNA not to like that because I was so into this other subgenre, right? But then some of those songs were so good. Like if you were in a club and Salt Shaker came on, you had like it was something. You couldn't deny it. You know what I mean? And then this record came out and you're like, I don't like a lot of what he's doing, but he's so good at it. Eventually, it breaks down. Like, oh, this is really good.
There's 3 times where beats twisted up my brain, and I didn't know what I was hearing anymore. Right. So when I first heard Paul's Boutique and those weird beats that they were working with on that, and then I thought like, that was the last time my mind will be blown. Then I got to this. I got to Who Is by Mike Jones, and I was like, I didn't know beats could be made like this. The last album to blow my mind with the way they constructed beats and how weird it was The Antwoord. Those would be my top 3, and that is an uneducated opinion, but those are my top 3 people who broke music with a new way of making beats in my mind.
No, I think those 3 are all on the list. You know what I mean? Of like you listen to and like especially as young as we were when Paul's Boutique came out. Yeah. I think it's easy to blow a young person's mind with music because you have limited experience, right?
Right.
But when something comes out, when you're in your 20s or even your 30s and you've been listening to music for 20, 30 years of pop music and something comes out and just blows your mind, you said like it breaks your mind because you didn't just think it exists, that's an amazing experience to me. That's really why I still listen to a lot of new music because I want to have that again.
Yeah, and maybe we should also say for some people out there who are younger, if you wanted to check something out, that was a $15 or $20 investment. That might be that one thing you get that week.
Yeah. Now with the streaming era, if you don't like the intro to an album, you move on to the next thing, and it costs nothing.
Right.
So I think a lot of even like, as great as Paul's Boutique is, you brought it up a couple times already. Does that work in an era where you have to put some time into it?
No.
It starts off kind of slow with all the girls. It's so good if you put the time in, but if you only listen to that once and never go back to it, it doesn't have nearly the same impact. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's like reading a book when you're tired, man. Yeah. Sometimes you got to get through those first 3 chapters before you're hooked, you know?
Yeah, I feel bad for musicians today that have to put out single after single and realize they're making albums that maybe no one listens to because they just listen to the singles and then they put on a playlist of other people's singles. What's crazy to me, man, is like this music that's 20 plus years old now was so like esoteric and hated on by our parents.
Right.
And we haven't grown out of it. Like I'm in the car with my daughter playing 90s hip hop and being like, oh, you got to learn about Tupac and Biggie. You got to learn about Bone Thugs and Harmony. But like how does that kind of music become dad rock? But it has. It largely has.
How long did it take you to decipher what Mike Jones was saying in that chorus? Were
Back then?
Yeah.
I got it pretty right away.
Pretty quick?
Oh, but I could also see if you weren't 15 years deep into listening to this kind of music, you might not get it right away.
No, it took me a while, but then I was like, that I like that, right? I have a few favorite lines in hip hop that'll always be associated with words. Like if somebody says like champagne, I still to this day I hear break out the champagne glasses and the motherfucking condoms. You know, you got any one-word triggers for hip hop lyrics?
I have one that every time I turn a mic on, which happens a lot.
But you failed that earlier.
I did fail it tonight. But my normal mic check is microphone check 1 2. What it is? It's a 5-foot assassin with a roughneck business. Like Fight from A Tribe Called Quest, and really a simple 1 2 1 2 would suffice.
Yeah.
When you're checking a PA system.
Yeah.
That one's stuck in my head for a long time. The Mike Jones one are kind of weird because I don't think you would say he's like a great lyricist, but he's got this mix of like a cool voice, great production, and almost like motivational speaker lines.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot about like I made it, I did X, Y, Z, but not in a like I'm better than you way, in a way of like you can internalize this and make yourself like do things yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where I said that's a rare thing. I think they're two of the biggest rappers ever. Like Jay-Z has a way of telling you he's a billionaire, and you don't become jealous that you want to root for him. 50 Cent, particularly like the last 10 years of 50 Cent, he sounds like he's kind of a dick when he's telling you how rich he is.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you quantify. I don't know what it is. It's a personality thing.
It's that underdog.
Yeah, you want to root for the underdog.
Yeah.
And some rappers can do it throughout their career and never seem like they're not the underdog anymore, and some sound like bullies. And I think that's what it is. And Mike Jones came out at a time where it was like he was so happy to get his foot in the door in the entertainment industry. I was kind of happy for him because it was fun to watch.
Yeah. And the one line that hit me from him was he says, and I ain't tripping because my pockets stick out more than my belly. And that was, dude, once I heard that, I was like, dude, this guy, he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
He could rock, and it was super fun. And that mentality kind of flows through this whole album, I think. Like the underdog vibe, the lady troubles, the distrust. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I don't say most rappers, just sweeping generalization, but a lot of rappers are based on the idea of like I'm the greatest thing you've ever seen. I'm the best rapper, give it the hottest women, have the best cars. And Mike Jones makes fun of himself a lot in a way of like that my pockets stick out more than my belly. It's like I'm not afraid to poke fun at myself, but look at like I made it, which is a kind of a cool idea. And I think that kind of, when rap and I think you saw it first maybe with Eminem, then Mike Jones, and then you look at like what happened after with guys like I'm trying to think like J. Cole and like these super Drake, like super vulnerable guys, like letting you in they weren't superheroes anymore. They became real people.
I have a theory about that. And which will become another running theory over this album, which is cars. I think he grew up with people who are obsessed with getting cars and making them cool, and then most of the other hip hop was obsessed with buying cool cars. And I think that's that mentality, like get something and make it big rather than just try to make something big and then get something big, you know?
Agreed. And I think that's the whole idea. I think I heard a pretty good quote like 20 years ago in the late 90s when Southern rappers really started to get big. Like Master P comes out, Hot Boys come out, Ludacris comes out. I was watching this interview with this lady, I think her name was Wendy Day. She's like an advocate for musician stuff. And somebody asked her at this interview, why are Southern artists, like the ones from Houston, blowing up way bigger than ones from New York and LA right now? And she said because when in New York or LA, you become a rapper and then you go to a record label and you say, I can rap, can you make me a star? Every other city except New York and LA, the version is this. They go to a record label and they say, I just sold 30,000 tapes out of the trunk of my car. Can you help me sell 60,000? And that's a much easier sell to a record label, right? So I think and if you look at the Swisher House and this whole movement, the idea was like, I can't buy a Bentley, but I could buy a Chrysler LeBaron and put the best rims and the best tints and the best sound system in it. The same way, like, I can't go buy a track from Puff Daddy, but I could get a Michael Watts track that bangs just as hard in the club here. And then some of those tracks hit the clubs in New York and LA super hard too.
Yo, there's an OK Lincoln Continental in his rap video.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, dude.
If it's weird, man. If the two rap videos have changed so much. When you go watch these old videos, they look different. The cars are different. They're in the hood. There's regular women dancing in them. It's not just all super plastic surgery models.
Yeah.
It's a different era 15 years ago.
And you
now.
know you're watching a video from our era when the video doesn't fill the whole YouTube screen.
Yeah, it wasn't HD yet. It can't be stretched to widescreen.
That brings us straight into track 3, Flossin', which I think it introduced concepts. I've still never heard a rapper this day flex on the cut of his diamonds. I don't know if it princess cut. I don't know what that is. Do you? You bought a ring.
I do now, but probably only because I bought an engagement. And it's become a thing in rap music, but I haven't heard that a lot, no.
Yeah. How many different cuts for rings are there? For diamonds?
There's a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a whole nother subgenre of thing. I didn't know anything about it until I was forced to had to buy a ring.
I guess sometimes it's good to be
forced to learn about
adult child.
Yeah. This track to me is great. I think it's the perfect sequencing to go from back then, which is kind of like him beating his chest and be like, look how far I've come, to this kind of like celebration song.
Yeah.
Like, back then girls didn't want me, now I'm hot, they're all on me, and now I'm flossing with these cars and these just jewelry and these watches, and I went from not being able to get in the club to being in the VIP section.
Okay. First reference of Purple Drink was them or Hot Boys?
I'm going to go...
Or something else?
I'm going to go the first big national record reference is Sipping on Some Syrup by 3 6 Mafia. That's the first. I think that's the first I heard of it, which is 2000. But that genre was around before that, because by then people were saying the word
Chopped and screwed.
Right.
Which is DJ Screw kind of created this sound where you slow the record down to where it sounds good if you're on lean or kind of on downers, right?
Right.
So, but DJ Screw died in 2000 from an overdose of lean.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know, that's how he died.
Have you ever sipped lean?
No. Have you?
Yes. It's the one thing I would say I'm not an opiate guy.
Right.
I had a surgery. Those Percocets took me like 3 years to go through. If that lean was around, I don't want to know where to get it. I'm glad it's so expensive. Because that is one thing that I'd messed with where I was like, oh, I like this too much.
Really?
Yeah.
It always seemed to me, and I've always looked at it from the outside, it was the kind of high and the kind of experience. If you had nothing to do, I could understand it being like a cool way to spend an afternoon. But if you have a life and things going on, the way you're that slowed and mellowed, can you be productive on it, I guess is my question? Or is it you guys just sit down and hang out?
I think you got to look at that the way they give hyperactive kids amphetamines and it calms them down. It can, for me, in my experience, anything in that whole opiate category kicks people into a couch, but other people are crazy productive.
Okay, that's
you know
fair.
what I mean? It opens up your mind, in a way. Like I said on your podcast, which is called
Me and My Cousins.
That we all want to say like drugs are bad, and especially heroin. But if you take heroin out of the last 100 years of music kind of sucks.
Agreed. I don't know how anyone can argue that. I don't understand. Like, I'm not at all advocating people use hard drugs, but I think if you look at the effect it's had on pretty much every genre of music that's worth anything, it's hard to argue what you just said.
Now, we also hit tons of car references in this song, which most of I'm aware of. They keep saying 84s, and I don't know what that is. I got two hip-hop mysteries. One is when the Bone Thugs always say, let's get POD'd. Never known what that means. And when Mike Jones and the other rappers on this album reference 84s come pulling up, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm going to guess it's some model of a car that came out in 84 that they all liked and started souping up. But that could be completely wrong. Because I know, like, on the West Coast, talk about 6.4s. Like those cars, I'm assuming they came out in 64 and they turned into lowriders.
Okay, we might be onto something.
Yeah, because if you go watch their videos, it does seem like 80s era cars were their thing.
If I put this on YouTube, then hit up the comment threads about how ignorant we are to those two hip hop references.
Not car guys.
Yeah,
but the other, there's a bunch of people.
I kind of was a car guy though. That's the thing.
Yeah, I never was. I don't know. The other thing on this, he introduces a bunch of people on this album. We didn't know before this. And the singer on this, Big Mo, I think is a great singer. When I heard this, I'm like, this guy's the Southern Nate Dogg. He's going to blow up. And then he passed away a couple years later and never really had a career. But I think he's a great singer on this. I think his voice goes with that track perfectly.
I mean, it kicked. It was era mixing for sure. You know what I mean? Like it sounded like when you listened to him, you knew what his parents listened to when he was growing up. At the end of this album, and I don't know whether this was a slip in production, but he closes the song out by saying, "Who is Mike Jones coming soon?"
Yeah.
And that seems like it should have been cut out because he's referencing the album Coming Soon. So maybe that was just for the single. I don't know, but
I think this is an album that if you sent it to a marketing person, like someone who understands marketing and promotions, would be like, it doesn't make any sense. The first line on the album is promoting his next album,
The American Dream.
yes.
The last line of the album is promoting an album you just listened to that's supposedly coming soon, right?
Yeah.
He says his name a million times on it. He gives you his cell phone number. Like, I don't think any marketing advertising person would be like, that's the way to do an album. But,
No.
but it goes against all logic and reason and still somehow works. Like, I listened to this today. And when you get to the end of that last track, you're kind of like, coming soon. I already came. But like, I didn't hate it. I was like, all right, man, way to go. Let's play it again.
No. And like, all that could just be ran out of production month.
Yeah.
Like that budget was up. We got it's done, dude. You know, I with my friends' bands now, I hear things in albums and they go, I can't fix it now. We already paid for that studio time. You know?
It's weird to know the other side of how that works sometimes.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, that was an artistic choice. That was a financial choice.
And then we get hit with Still Tippin'. Arguably people's second favorite song on the whole album.
Yeah, I think for me, it's my favorite song on the album, and I said in a YouTube video I made about this like 10 years ago, I think it's one of the best rap songs of the 2000s. Like, I think if you made a mixtape of the best songs from 2000 to 2010, I don't know how you don't include this. You probably include back then. To me, you definitely include Still Tippin'.
Mm-hmm. Again, and now this might be an error. This is the first song where Mike doesn't open, right?
Yeah.
Slim Thug opens, who I assume is not slim.
He's a big guy. He looks like a football player. He's not fat. He's just like a big dude.
Okay.
But Slim Thug is an odd name for him. But like, so this is a weird. Slim Thug before this song should have been the star of the song. He was already in the game. He had an album out. He had worked with the Neptunes. He was like supposed to be the next big guy from Houston, and just never took off.
Okay.
The rumor what I've heard was in the early 2000s, Slim Thug was so big in Houston with mixtapes and guest appearances stuff. When Pharrell and the Neptunes signed to that whatever label he was on, they had a bunch of deals on the table, and the Neptunes were the biggest thing in the world in the early 2000s. Every pop hits them. They're like, we're going to sign with this label if we can produce albums with Snoop Dogg, which they did, and that resulted in like Beautiful, Drop It Like It's Hot, those anthems, and Slim Thug. And then they made an album with Slim Thug, and because it didn't sound, I guess, Houston enough, it didn't blow up. So this is like his second introduction to the game.
Okay.
So he's like on his second chance.
Best line, blowing on that Endo GameCube Nintendo. 5% tint so you can't see up in my window. Now you know what 5% tint is?
Yeah, where it's so dark you can't see out of it.
There was like legal limits of percentages.
2%?
I think so.
Maybe in New Jersey it was 2%.
Yeah,
I remember
you can get tickets. I got tickets in my truck for tint, you know?
Right. Two reasons I love hip hop is it's still very regional, right? So when you listen to this, they're telling you about Houston, right? In a way, we're talking. We don't know what 84s are because we didn't grow up in Houston. We're just talking about Houston. But then the songs become these weird time capsules, right? If you're bragging about having a GameCube, that could only happen between about 2001 and 2006 when the Wii comes out, right?
Right.
Because having a GameCube now, you got a yard sale. It doesn't matter, right?
Right.
But at the time, a GameCube was a big deal, and that's one thing I always like you listen to old hip hop and like, oh, they're talking about two-way pagers, so it came out now.
Yeah.
Or the guy's looking for a payphone, so it's from the 80s.
Now Paul Wall comes in here.
Well, Mike Jones first. Then
yeah. Mike Jones, not the star of this song. His verse is strong, but like really, this is like all three people are equal here. I think everybody kills it.
Because this is a song where if you just heard on the radio, it could have easily been Slim Thug songs or Paul Wall. It could have been featuring any of the three. Like, there's not a clear star on this.
This song, obsessed with wood grain after this. Like me, right? I had a wood grain steering wheel, wood grain wallet. I had, I still got that wood grain. It's still around here somewhere. Yeah, obsessed with wood grain. Used to be able to get dash kits for cars back then, where it would be like essentially just peel off stickers to make your car look more expensive than it was. And I had a 1994 Mitsubishi pickup truck, and I bought the wood grain dash kit.
Beautiful.
$150 for pre-cut wood stickers.
Can I drop one more thing about Paul Wall's
Yeah.
verse? He does something weird on this song.
Okay.
He drops a bunch of names of people that the next year or so kind of become famous.
Okay.
His
Michael Watts.
made me hot.
Yeah.
When this song comes out, Michael Watts says nobody knows who he is outside of Houston, right?
Okay.
And he talks about T. Ferris and a bunch of people involved in Swisher House, and I'm assuming the Houston rap scene.
Right.
But they're not celebrities. Like, this song is on MTV. It's on Hot 97. It's a worldwide hit with shout-outs to like a dozen people at the time. Nobody knows who they are. The other thing he says, which I think is probably maybe the most significant thing on the album as far as like telling the future, he's like,
Got the internet going nuts.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know of any other rapper that bragged of internet celebrity before this, right? This is very early Facebook, very early MySpace. There's forums, but he was kind
Yeah.
of the first. You could, like, what Dane Cook was the comedy, you can make some argument Paul Wall was to hip hop. Yeah, and it's weird because now 15 years later, having the internet going nuts is pretty much the only way to become known as an artist.
Yeah, I mean, Post Malone came straight out of SoundCloud, and then, like, in the wake of that, how many other guys came out of SoundCloud, you know?
Yeah, a million little guys.
Million Lils. Yeah, but
Peep was an angel.
we'll just say that.
But I will say, I think it's weird. There's this weird thing on this album where there's Mike Jones, and then there's probably like 10 other people involved in the sphere of this album. There's Big Mo, Paul Wall, Slim Thug, a bunch of people we'll get to later. When this comes out, you're like, oh, all of this is going to be used. This is the next big thing. And nobody really stuck, including Mike Jones. It's this weird, like lightning in a bottle experience where if you would ask me at the end of 2005, I'm telling you Paul Wall and Slim Thug are the next
Big thing.
and like it never really happened. Like they both had albums, had a couple little hits, but they never really stuck around the way you kind of thought they would.
And we lost a lot of that. Like, if you look at, like, the Seattle sound, now it's just a universal sound. Like, everybody's competing with each other. Things don't develop like they used to, I think, which could be good or bad in the long run, you know?
And the other thing, the sound on this album, even though like these guys didn't really continue with their trajectory of fame, it definitely influenced the genre. Like A$AP Rocky is incredibly influenced by this, one of the biggest stars in the world, right? His music's kind of like a mashup of like Harlem, Dipset era, and the
Chopped and screwed era.
Houston. He had a lot of big hits doing that. So it definitely had an impact. It's like, unfortunately, these guys didn't get to see the fruits of their labor.
That runs us into
Got it sued up.
and this beat. I remember I'd adapted to the other beats on this because, like I said, it was strange like Paul's Boutique. But when I got hit with this one, I was like, all right, what is this? Is this joke hip hop now? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, because it's referencing like a girl moaning and a Christmas song I can't name, I feel like.
Yeah, dude, I don't know what it is either, but it's definitely like one of those. It sounds like the beginning of a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
like whenever you're seeing like a montage of people getting ready for the holidays, it's definitely something like that.
We're back because of these scandalous hoes. This song's the first vibe change on the album. I've been this guy who's having a good night, and then he gets a text or he gets a voicemail he doesn't like, and then the whole thing is changed. Also, this song would not fly in 2020.
Okay, two things on that, right? Number one, we talked earlier on this show about how like people take drugs and sit on their couch and do nothing, and some people take drugs and write great music, right? Do great comedy, whatever it is. I feel like the woman thing is the same thing, right? Everybody's gotten a bad text, they got it blown off, they got broke up with a girl, whatever it is, right? Most people deal with it by doing nothing, right?
Okay.
Mike Jones deals with it by writing a great song like Scandalous Hoes.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing is, like, I feel like I know what you're saying about it in a hashtag Me Too era, this doesn't happen.
No.
But don't you feel like as a society we give rappers a pass that we don't give comedians, actors, any other entertainer or any other person?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. The only place you can get away with whatever you want is in hip-hop and movies.
Right, and movies make sense. It's a character, right? You're not saying the bad thing; the character's saying it, right?
Yeah.
Hip hop's weird because supposedly you're being yourself when you're calling women scandalous hoes, right?
Yeah.
It's always, and my two favorite things in the world, entertainment-wise, are comedy and hip hop. It's just a weird thing that we view these two things so completely differently.
What I did love about Scandalous Hoes is that this is the first reference to his grandma, and his grandma's like, this is how you got to treat hoes. You know, like his grandmother knew a few. They sat next to her in church.
It's just weird. The whole song is almost the kind of thing you listen to and you're like, is this a joke? but it's not. He's being serious.
No.
But just the way the hook sounds and the chorus sounds, you could think it's like a comedy song. But then then he references his grandma giving him advice, and that's kind of funny. But it's not. I don't think he's trying to be funny.
You know what this sounds like? And this ain't in the notes. What a rap song by Mr. Patrice O'Neal would sound
That's
like.
a very good point.
Yeah.
I never thought of that before, but you
Yeah.
hit that on the head.
Yeah, this sounds like the Beige Phillip, Black Phillip show. This sounds like those thoughts that he had, which again would not fly these days.
And also, I just want to make it known, I'm not into bashing women, but he's not saying all women are
He's drawing
scandalous.
distinctions.
He's saying there are.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with these scandalous women.
We all know dickhead guys, and then we know like average Joes who get lumped in. It ain't a thing, you know what I mean? Like it's all right. We all make generalizations. So, is
Screw that.
the attempt at a Houston anthem,
Yes,
right?
I think it is. Weirdly enough, I think still Tippin became more of a Houston anthem
Right.
than this. But this is good. Like, you could tell he made this with that. This is going to crush clubs in the whole South, but especially Houston.
Right. I also remember, too, when this came out, I was younger, and I just remember being like, man, I thought Texas was nothing but redneck fellas. So to hear that there was this rap scene and to hear that, like, Houston was going back to Parliament Funkadelic, I didn't realize, like, Houston could have been referred to as what George Clinton would have called it a chocolate city at this point, you know?
Right.
And, like, they had a whole scene going on.
I think it's something weird too that Houston has this weird like mix of those two cultures, right?
Right.
Like you're a rapper, but you're working on your car, which is kind of like a redneck thing, you know? what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like you're a rapper, but you're a super big like Houston sports fan. You're in the public. Like they have this pride about their city, and it's this weird mix of like both cultures. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why I think from the beginning of like Texas hip hop, from the Ghetto Boys on, it's always that kind of like to use it clearly, that Southern fried feel to it. And I think this is one. And there's like if you look at like Houston hip hop from the '80s till today, it's not always on the national radar, but every once in a while something bubbles
Something
up.
pops,
like
yeah.
there's My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me was big for a year. Then it kind of faded. Then UGK popped. Then this popped. Then now Travis Scott's the biggest thing in the world. And it's kind of like that mix of those two cultures, which I think is cool.
Right. Now, every now and then something comes on. It's a trend in the car world, right? Everybody remembers spinners, right? Wood grain was also another trend. Candy paint was, well, what Mike Jones says is that candy paint and codeine both came out of Houston. That was where things were original. I remember I was big into lowriders, and I remember seeing that candy paint in magazines and a website called bumpstop.com, right?
Okay.
And there was a guy down here in humble redneck Forked River who was doing a little bit of the candy paint vibe, and one time I went over there and he was like, yeah, see what he could do to my truck, and he was like, yeah, that'd be like $5,000. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. It's just, there's a couple things that real quick is I think if you look at the bigger picture of this path of excess of I'm going to put diamonds in my mouth like Paul Wall.
Right.
I'm going to buy a car and put $10,000 rims and $10,000 worth of paint and rip out the steering wheel and put wood grain everywhere I can. It's this weird like taking pride in and having these material things, right?
Right.
Mixed with the idea of almost no foresight to a future whatsoever, which I think is the thing that doesn't get the idea of like I'm here now and I'm going to do anything I can to make right now great. You know,
I heard another theory about this.
that if you don't, like, I think that what we see our kids say with the face tattoos,
Right.
the idea of I'm not going to live past 30. I want to be the best 20-year-old I could ever possibly be.
Yeah.
Which I think it's misunderstood by a lot of America. But and it's not. I'm the opposite. Like I drive a Nissan Altima. I've never done anything with a car.
Yeah, I got that Kia Soul, dog.
I have no tattoos, but I don't have anything against tattoos at all. But like I live
You want to change that tonight? I can get somebody over here.
We'll see. But I feel like I spend so much time planning for the future because I came from a background of people telling me you're going to live to be old. Where if you don't, maybe you look at the world differently, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dude, your first car is your first portal into freedom, man. It's your first mobile bedroom.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, how many dudes and how many chicks had that first hookup in the back seat of, like, a Buick Century? You know what I'm saying? Plymouth Reliant. But, like, how many people out there lost their virginity with a seatbelt poking them in the hip?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, another thing I'll say is interesting about Southern. I think we talk all the time in the hip hop media that New York has fallen off in the last 10, 20 years. The South and the Midwest and the West Coast is taking over from a commercial standpoint.
Yeah,
right?
New York got too expensive for art, right?
Well, but there's that, and I think the one thing is if you look at, and this is from a lifetime New York hip hop fan, New York rappers make music for your headphones because you're on public transportation, you're walking from A to B.
That's fucking...
Everywhere else in the world made music for your car. And the thing is, everywhere else but New York drives everywhere, right? Think about this for a second. In New York City, there's rich people that don't drive. Driving's too hard, right?
Right.
In every other part of the world, including New Jersey, which is just outside of New York, poor people drive. Everybody drives.
You
right?
gotta drive.
So you make music for the car, and that appeals to a much bigger population than the music they made for your headphones. I mean, that's the thing. New Yorkers want to look at this being simple, but in reality, it's not necessarily simple. It's that you're not hugged up on a subway train with 300 people.
Right.
Headphones
You
blasting.
don't know nothing about that turning lane.
You're driving with the windows open, sitting sideways, going to the turning lane. And I get that. Like I agree with, like, I'm the biggest DJ Premier fan in the world. I'll buy anything he produces a beat on. But if I'm in my car, Mike Jones goes harder.
Yeah, which brings us straight into Turning Lane, which is just a song about cars. And it's like, again, highly influential. It comes in hard. Tons of self-promotion. The beat is amazing. And, like, I think I tweeted in, like, 2017, who thinks Mike Jones is still in the Turning Lane? You know?
Pretty good.
He might still be there, you know? He really flexes on this song. He starts to get into some skills that perhaps you didn't know he had in the other tracks. Like the pace is up, the energy's high. What was your first car?
A early 90s, I forget what year, Grand Prix, Pontiac Grand Prix.
Okay, that 4-door, 2-door?
4-door. 4-door, white Grand Prix.
Damn. 2-door was hot.
Yeah, well, dude, there was
that coupe.
There was a 2-door Grand Prix was better than that, and then the Grand Am was way better than that. But I remember the deal I got on at the time, it was a car that made sense for me at that age. So it was a decent car. What was yours?
It was a 1994 Mitsubishi Mighty Max.
That's a truck, right?
It's a miniature pickup. Rode flat, 17-inch Dayton wire rims when wire rims were hot.
Big deal, yeah.
Yeah. 210s under the seat, 212s behind the seat. Now, those 210s under the seat did nothing but make the seat vibrate, and the 212s behind the seat was a wall of noise. My hearing right now, not great.
That's a perfect car for a young man in Southern Ocean County in the late 90s to drive. Like, yeah, that'd be the coolest car in your high school, right? Or one of the
No, people around here got money.
Okay, but
custom-wise?
Yeah,
close.
that's what I meant.
Custom-wise, I was top 5.
Like, if you're not going to go buy a Corvette, I think that's probably one of the best cars you could have as a high school kid.
You remember that era, though, when you'd pull up to a red light, and it's weird that this stuff has disappeared, but there was a time when you pulled up to a red light and you would hear your stereo or the guy next to you's subwoofers, and then the guy over there, like everybody had systems in this era.
It's weirdly enough, I was in traffic on the Parkway today.
Okay.
Right? And the car I was next to was a woman playing like an old R&B song, very loud.
Right.
And it took me by surprise because you don't hear that anymore.
Yeah.
So if you in '98 that happens on the Parkway, you're like, oh, cool. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
You try to beat her with your system.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
And like me and her kind of made eye contact. I gave her like the nod.
Yeah.
But like that's so rare now. You know what I think it is though? I think it's kids, not kids, but say if you're 20 today, you grew up in the iPod era of just having your music is on you. Where we grew up looking up to kids that have boom boxes and being loud and look at me.
Dude.
These kids don't. These kids want to have their phone and their iPad and their headphones on and not have people look at them.
Like, still to this day, I want my music to be a multimedia experience. Like, I want you to hear it. I want you to feel it. You know what I mean? Like, that truck, I said there was 2 tens under the seat.
Mm-hmm.
Like that thing made you feel. If I started cranking it up, it felt like you were vibrating off of this plane.
Right. Yeah. I'm such not a car guy. It's weird that I was never into cars at all. Like I grew up with hip hop in my life. I grew up in Tom's River, which is if you were on 37, even now you see more of this than ever. But it was a thing I never was interested in. So it's weird.
Yeah, I don't know, man, but I'll tell you what. I got like 30-something tickets before I was 25 years old.
Yeah,
because that law's patrolling, dog.
Yeah, man.
Which is the next track, man, Laws Patrolling. I feel like every single cop that pulled me over got up to that passenger side window and saw me, and they were like, this isn't what I was expecting at all.
Yeah, man. It was weird. I feel like you're the right age where you grew up where hip-hop was part of your life in a way. Like, we're 5 years different. And for me, there weren't many people like you in my high school. There were a handful, right, of like a kid that might look like a skater or a punk rock kid, but still like hip-hop. Whereas by the time you got to be 17, say, there was more common thing, and then you get to today where everybody listens to everything.
Yeah, I mean, even the difference between the 20 miles that we grew up, man, like down here there wasn't that. Down here it was like you pick your thing, your goth, your redneck, your country music, and that's it. Like
and that's one thing. I think two things have done that. And see if you rock with me on this. The iPod or whatever, the way we stream music now, where music doesn't cost anything, right, has made that incredibly easy. And the example I always give. When I was playing sports in high school, my high school weight room played the Black Album by Metallica every day. And I liked it. I was into it. But like, I wouldn't go out of the way to buy it because it cost $20 and to ride it was too much. I didn't have the money. I just listened to it at school. But like now, if you like, your iPod could be, or your Spotify could be a Metallica song, followed by a Mike Jones song, followed by a Drake song, followed by a Celine Dion song. Whereas in our era, that would have cost $100 to amass all that media.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. And like you hit me with that thing one time where you said like these kids now who are making music can be influenced by literally everything, where we had to like budget out our influences, you know, and that was I thought about that so much. Yeah, dude. I mean, back I knew the difference. Like most people probably don't know the difference between like rap and hip hop, or they have their own opinion on that. But I knew the difference between when you're looking at hydraulics and airbags. Those are two different things. Most people probably don't even know that. I know exactly how much both of those cost to install in 2002. So, but as the song goes about cops, right? Like coming out of gangster, it's more of a how it is perspective than a rebellious, fuck the police kind of thing, right? It's just like this is just the matter of fact. This is the way of life. This is it.
Yeah, agreed. It's almost like the attitude of like I'm in my neighborhood. And the same cops are in my neighborhood day to day, and I'm still driving this car that's illegal for a couple different reasons, or I'm doing whatever I do. And it's almost like when the cop pulls them over, he's like, oh, you got me this time, but I'll see how it goes tomorrow. Yeah. Which is we live in a weird era to talk about this now, but it's almost like a healthy relationship on both sides. Like, my job's to patrol the streets and make sure you don't drive this car that's illegal, but you want to get away with it. Let's play cat and mouse.
I got pulled over one time. He didn't even know why he pulled me over. And then he goes, your license plates are dirty. And I go, I'm going to write the ticket.
Yeah, just let's go.
Now, this is when I said earlier that sometimes some of the songs I didn't like then hit me hard. 5 years from now is just, like, he covers a bunch of different topics, but all of those I've thought about on a regular basis since then.
Yeah,
you know
it's a simplistic grown man rap song. It's a song that if you're say 20, if you're 15, you don't maybe think about as much, but then you listen to it again at 25 and you're like, oh, these are real things. I need to have these conversations either with my family or myself because number one, 5 years goes by quick when you're a little bit older.
So quick.
And number two, everything he's saying is a relevant thing. You gotta, am I gonna have some kids? Am I gonna get big in showbiz? Am I gonna have to go back to selling drugs? There's
he'll be living with his grandmas. He can be dead. You know, he says like he's afraid to have babies because the world's going crazy. You know.
Yeah, man, he really it's like a song where it's almost beautiful in its simplicity. It's just a kind of a regular guy thinking about 5 years in the future, and he has nothing but questions, kind of like we all do. That's right. What's happen in 5 years.
Now it has a little bit of a Bone Thugs vibe about it, and also I think it may have been his attempt to do a song like Changes like Pac did, where you're like trying to hit on a social level. You know, you're trying to hit on like express confusion and express like a bunch of different things all at once.
Yeah, that's a good reference point on that.
And again, another one of the hip hop lyrics. One of the Exhibit albums, he says, plus I'm dreaded not by the locks, but by the cops. And I love that wordplay.
Yeah, it's good.
And on this track, Mike Jones says, get a Grammy or will I live with my granny?
I think as two people who dabble in music and comedy with me and you, I think that's a weird, it's great wordplay. But it's really an all or nothing equation, right? You're going to blow up and have more money than your grandkids could spend and have Grammys and get in the game, or you're going to have to move back home because you have no money, no job, no retirement savings. And that's like even if you don't like his music, you got to respect, I think, a guy that shoots a shot like that. Like, I'm going all in on this album, and it's either I'm at the Grammys or I'm at my granny's, but I'm going to throw the dice. Which I respect that more than the guy that doesn't pursue what he loves to go get a 9-to-5.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're on that middle road, which is good. That's exactly what you should be doing. I've been investing in that art and the wild lifestyle, and I'm not sure it pays off at the end of the day.
Fair, but I think but I like the all or nothing vibe, and then that line encapsulated.
Oh, bro, if I was coming up now, if I was 18 right now, like I've made a lot of bad tattoo decisions but these were year 2000. This was millennium tattoo decisions that were bad. But if I was 18 now, I would have a tattoo on my face, easy.
Yeah. Easy.
And then if you don't get tattoos,
I
like
have a little sushi roll or something right under my eye.
If you are a guy like me that's in his early 40s and doesn't have any tattoos, and then you look at I don't know. I remember when I was little, people saying like, "Don't get tattoos and you can't get this job or that job." Or you'll never. But then I don't know anyone in my entire life that having a tattoo has negatively affected them.
Now we get back to another weird beat on Cuttin', right? But this beat's weird.
Oh yeah,
it's the weirdest beat on the album.
Yes, I'm gonna say it's got like an organ sample that sounds almost like a joke. Like it sounds almost like the theme song to Austin Powers, and then you got the yodeling, and then it stops every couple bars.
Yeah.
With the I guess like the word "cutting" is cut into it from a DJ. It's a bizarre. It's the song. It's probably the one song on the album. If you played for somebody, they'd be like, "What the hell is that? I don't want to hear that again." Or they'd be like, "That's incredibly interesting. I want to hear more of that." There's no middle line.
I'm trying to think if anything like. No, it still sounds original. It still sounds like unexplored territory, and also it's listed as a remix on the original album.
There's two of those, aren't there? That are remixes that no one
happened because of Chameleonaire.
Okay, we'll get to that, I guess.
Yeah.
But this is another thing where, like, Paul Wall
I ain't even saying it's his fault. I'm just saying that's why.
Okay, we'll get to that. But there's nothing like Paul Wall shouting out all these Houston people that were not famous yet.
Yeah.
There's two remixes to songs that no one's aware of the original, which is a weird thing. Like, the only other example that I could think of in hip-hop was when Mobb Deep did Shook Ones Part 2. But Shook Ones Part... No one's ever heard Shook Ones Part 1. It's on their first album before they were anywhere near... Shook Ones Part 2, I think, is a perfect song, right?
Okay.
It's 90s hip-hop in 3 minutes. It's amazing. But Shook Ones Part 1 was on their first album that flopped when they were teenagers, and it's a complete non-factor in the history books. But then the Part 2 of it is this weird... It's an anthem, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. It's almost what happens here, where he puts on these remixes. He could have called both these songs the original, and 99% of the world would have never known it wasn't original.
Yeah. And we're back with...
What You Know About.
This is another car song. And this is another song with Mr. Paul Wall.
Mike Jones and Paul Wall are a good combination to me. I think like they could have done more together than just these two songs. But I think they work well together.
This song is like deep with car references. I would say like when I hear somebody speaking Spanish, I pick up about 25%, and I'm on the same level with these car references. Like I don't know whether it was Houston specific things. There was a few things that was like you call them hoes, we call them bops, which was talking about chicks, and so like they were very big into their own dialect down there, and I like that. Yeah,
I like people introducing new slang, and if it takes off outside of their city, I think that's kind of cool. It's think about this: bling bling didn't mean anything before the big timers put out bling bling in '99 or 2000, whatever year it was. Now that's in the dictionary.
But this song, if this doesn't make you nostalgic for like those days in like high school and even post high school where it was like you call a few people and they go, what are you doing? I don't know, we're gonna meet at Wawa and we're just gonna hang out. Whoever has the loudest stereo, we're gonna park in the corner, he's gonna be the DJ, and we're just gonna hang out till we figure out what's going on. And a lot of the time that was the whole night. That was killing it.
This whole album is kind of like great hangout music, right? It's kind of like you could put this on from beginning to end at a barbecue, or if you're just hanging out with your friends in a Wawa parking lot, or when you're driving to the next thing you're going to do that night, and it all kind of fits, man. It fits like just kind of like lazy day, lazy night, hanging out with your friends kind of thing.
Yeah, and that, man, I miss that, man. I miss simple nights, you know.
You got to think it's still got to exist a little bit. You still got to get. I mean, even with the phones and social media, you got to think somewhere right now there's a group of 15-year-olds hanging out and BSing and talking about the next step in life and the stuff we did when we were in high school. The other thing I think is different about this generation versus our generation, like you said, you would pull up to where you're going to hang out, and the guy with the loudest system would play the music, and that was everybody's soundtrack for that night, right?
Yeah, and that was me.
Right, cool. But now, if you're hanging out virtually, I could be listening to Mike Jones. You could be listening to opera. The other person hanging out with us on our Instagram Live, whatever, might be listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony. Who knows? Yeah. But I feel like music up until the era we're in right now has been such a communal thing, and now it's going a very private thing, which is not. I don't think that's great. I like the idea of like we're all listening and having the same experience. It's supposed we all got our earbuds in and we're listening to something different.
All right, this era, like, ask me what I'm doing on Thursday.
What are you doing on Thursday?
Dude, I'll be at Cost Cutters till I figure out what's going on. You know, that was so good. Yeah. I'll forever miss that.
Know what I'm saying?
Is track 13, and this is another one of the low key songs on the album, featuring Big Bun, who I suppose, unlike Slim Thug, actually is big. Hits you with the number, and it's, I wouldn't say like a low point, but I'd say like, what do they call that when you're eating something fancy and they give you sherbet? It's a palate cleanser, right? What else is there to say about this song?
I don't think much. I think it's the closest thing to album filler on there. I think that, to me, the first like 5 songs are just legit. Then there's a little bit of an energy lull, and then he finishes strong to me with 14 and 15.
Yeah, because the track 14 is the type of N with a soft A at the end you need, and this is another one of those ones that hits you as you get older, because this is a song about watching a girl making a mistake, chasing a thing she thinks she wants, but deep down, you know that's not who she is. It's a phase. Yeah.
And it's just weird thing I think it gets hip-hop artists and rappers get so pigeonholed into the whole genre being super misogynistic. But this is a song kind of like, if you rock with me now, when I blow up, you're gonna come on the journey with me.
Right.
If you hold me down now, I'll buy you a Benz when I get a Benz. And there's a lot of rap songs like that, right? There's Me and My Girlfriend by Jay-Z. There's a Fetty Wap song that's got the Trap Queen by Fetty Wap. And I think to some extent that's a fair thing, right? Like, don't not give me your number when I'm struggling, and then when I blow up, you want to be my girl all of a sudden. Hold me down now, and then when I have money, I'll take care of both of us. And it's a fair way to look at life.
And at its essence, it's saying we're better off if we work together. It also seems to have a perspective change where he's going from the pockets stick out more than my belly guy to be like, I am going to be successful. That road is mapped out now, and it goes from like past to present in the same song. I do think it, again, as you get older, it's one of the stronger points on the album. Like, it really, like, I've been in that relationship, you know? Now, I'm talking about, like, a chick who's been with me who's, like, trying to be with a better rapper, but maybe a guy with, like, medical benefits. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think, too, with a debut rap album, is you have this phenomenon of there's the songs that the person made when they were in their basement trying to get noticed, right?
Right.
And then they get studio backing and record label backing. They go to a real studio, and now they're on that path, like you said, right?
Yeah.
So there's a dichotomy of there's a couple songs you made when you were a nobody, And now there's a couple songs you made when you're kind of given the keys to the castle, right?
Right.
Big studio, big producer. You're going to blow, or at least you have the chance to blow up that you didn't have pre-label backing.
Right.
And this is one of those songs where it's like, he's like, I got this. I'm going to. Still Tipping's probably already hit by the time we recorded this. And he's like, come and take this journey with me.
You're an Italian guy, right?
I am.
What'd you call it? Nonna? You have a Nonna?
Nah, man. I had just grandmas and grandpas. I never had any nicknames or anything.
None of that stuff. No. Okay.
We're my. I always made the joke. My name is so Italian, but my family's like Pizza Hut, Olive Garden Italian.
I did want to hit on that because who is Mike Jones is 2 syllables. If you put your name out, we're into like 7 or 8. You know what I mean?
If I made an album like this and said my name that many times, it'd be 3 hours long.
Yeah.
It'd be the godfather of rap albums.
Track 15, the closing track. Really, really good. Really, really good. Also calls his grandmother baby and girl.
Yeah, and it wants to hold you, and it's a weird thing where, like, if it was a love song to a woman his own age, as romantically involved with, it would still almost work.
I give him props for putting it out like this, though.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's heartfelt. You can tell he loves his grandmother. And he says at one point he gives her, the fact the entertainment industry is 99.9% her influence on him.
Right, yeah.
Which is, you can't hate on a guy that's giving his grandma props like that, can you?
No. It was like, and I miss my Uncle Charles, y'all. You know what I mean? Like, it hit me with that. But this is the most revealing track on the album where he explains to the audience that his whole business model, the whole theory of who he is and how he promoted himself is based on advice his grandmother gave him. My grandmother said, she taught me how to make applesauce. You know what I mean? She was not about promotion. He
was oddly, his grandmother, who was already passed away in 2005, so I'm assuming passed away in the early 2000s,
right,
was way ahead of her time.
Yeah.
Like, incredibly, if she would have been alive now, she'd be a person with like 100,000 Instagram followers.
Yeah.
Based on the principles she taught him, right?
Yeah.
But what I will say about the end of that and why I think it works without a break between the song Grandma and an outro is he takes 3-4 minutes and explains to you his grandmother told people, tell him your real name. Give him your phone number.
Right.
Do all these things. And then he ends the album by doing what his grandmother told him. Right, which is coming soon. Who is Mike Jones?
Yeah,
which I think that kind of takes it full circle of my grandmother told me to tell you who I am. So the last thing I'm going to do is tell you who I am.
Yeah. Grandma, what should I do when I go to strip clubs? You should tell people who you are. Right. I like the. I mean, there's one part where he just kind of updates on how everybody in the family is doing, and it sounds so goddamn sincere. He closes the album by making you like him 10% more than you already did. And if you've made it to this song, you already like him a lot. So he really sealed it with he sealed it up nice.
Yeah, he starts out on Back Then as a guy that it's hard to root against. Like, it's like, I like this guy, I like his vibe, I like what he's doing.
Right.
And by the end of Grandma, you almost can't root against him. You almost can't.
No. And maybe you want to call your own grandma.
Yeah, she's around, man. Give her a call and get some advice from her.
Grandma, what should I do to get my comedy career off the road?
Right.
How many times do you think he said his names on this album?
Hundreds. There's 15 songs. I'm going to say that'd be 8 times each song. I'm going to say it's over 100.
The internet says 98 plus.
Okay, over 15 songs. So I'm not too far off.
Okay, so we can both agree that this album has aged well, right?
Yeah.
Would you like to see what he would do with it in 2020?
I think, and it's going to sound cliche, but I think it's perfect in its imperfections.
Right?
I think there's things you can pick apart and say, I would have done X, Y, Z, but I think as a body of work, I don't think anything needs to be changed.
Damn, closing thoughts?
One thing I want to put out in the universe right now in 2020. In 2025, this album will celebrate a 20-year anniversary in April of 2025. What I think he should do, hoping by 2025 the world's back to normal or going to live shows again, is take this album on the road and do it start to finish. The way that's kind of common hip hop now, where like rappers take their classic albums on the anniversaries and do smaller venues and do everything, the intros, the outros, the skits, everything. And I would pay for that. I would travel and go to wherever that is.
I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Because I think like it's such a time capsule of the mid 2000s, and it's so good. And these songs still go hard in 2020, so I'm assuming in 2025 there could be a market.
Yeah, I don't think you could. I don't think if some kid was 20 right now and you played him a song, he could tell the difference when this was made. I think
No.
this could be made now. So that's about it with Angelo. I think we covered all the bases, and I think we did an okay job. We're going to close out with a topic that Angelo and I brushed upon but failed to follow through with, which was how come some things are labeled as a remix, and that's fairly unexplained. Again, with the difference in the spectrum of my friends and the style of conversation, I only knew why the song was a remix because of Nick. So, you knew something about this, there's a remix that's already a remix, but it was a remix. And how'd you come by that knowledge?
What's that?
There's a song on here that is a remix. It's listed as a remix on the album, and you know about why that is, right?
No.
You used to.
What?
Yeah.
They used to hug and kiss me. Now they love.
Yeah, because the first version was done with Chameleon Air, and then him and you do know, you
I
motherfucker.
remember. Yeah. I don't know what the exact reason is, but I do remember knowing it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, the first version was done with Chameleon Air, and then Mike Jones and Chameleon Air got mad at each other.
Cut in.
And then they redid the song, and that's why, as a track, it's listed as a remix on the original album.
That's hilarious.
You used to be very good at telling that story. Are you at all concerned about mental decline?
No, because I'm just a vat of useless information as it is. So when something falls out, there's something else that comes in.